Hello friends, welcome back. Today we shall continue with the discussion of the Elizabethan poetry, the third topic in the first unit of the paper number CC 102. This is the third lecture on this topic. In the earlier two video lectures, we have discussed about the important aspects and the major characteristic features of the Elizabethan poetry, the major poets of the age, the major forms of poetry, and in the discussion of that poetry, the first form that we talked about is sonnet. We saw the three different kinds of sonnet: Petrarchan sonnet, Shakespearean sonnet, and Spenserian sonnet. The different rhyme schemes used by different sonnet writers. We also talked about the contribution of Wyatt and Surrey. Then we talked about the contribution given by Sir Philip Sidney with his collection named Astrophel and Stella. Then in the same genre, we have a great poet whose name is Edmund Spenser. The collection of sonnet is Amoreti sonnets he has published, and after him we have a great writer, that is William Shakespeare, who has published 154 sonnets, and his sonnets are different from the sonnets of other poets of the age. Shakespeare's sonnets are in a different case, for they were written in moments snatched from work for the theatre. Now, when we say that his sonnets are in a different case means container here, they are written in moments snatched from work for the theatre. As we know, Shakespeare was working for theatre, and during his work period, he snatched away some of the moments and he wrote some sonnets during that time. His unique collection is yet the cascade which encloses the most precious pearls of Elizabethan lyricism, some of them unsurpassed by any lyricism. Very good words are here. His unique collection of sonnet is yet the cascade. Cascade means the jewelry box, which is a safe box or a vault into which the precious ornaments are preserved. As we preserve our precious ornaments in a very safe box, the same way the sonnets published by William Shakespeare have been stored or reserved in a casket. And why they are reserved in a casket? Because they are unsurpassed by any lyricism in the history of English literature. They are unsurpassed. Unsurpassed means unrivaled by any lyricism in the English literature. So the poetry written in the form of sonnet by William Shakespeare is unparalleled. Shakespeare tells of his fervent love for a young man of high birth whose beauty and nobility he celebrates. Now, when talking about Shakespeare's sonnets, we must mention that he addresses his sonnets to two different personalities. One is a young man and another is a woman who is addressed as a dark lady. Now, who is this young man to whom major of his sonnets are addressed to? Shakespeare's sonnets are addressed to a young man of high birth whose beauty and nobility he celebrates. His beauty and nobility means he is in love with that young man and whose company he celebrates. એની કંપની એને ખૂબ ગમે છે, એ માણે છે કંપનીને, એવા કોઈ વ્યક્તિને સંબોધીને શેક્સપિયરે પોતાના સોનેટ્સ લખ્યા છે. He devotes himself to him wholeheartedly. He has devoted himself to that young man wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly એટલે સંપૂર્ણપણે સમર્પિત ભાવથી. Finds in him his joy and his consolation for all the miseries of life. And that young man is the source of inspiration as well as consolation for him for all the miseries of his life. So, from that young man, he finds his joy as well as consolation for his life. So, this young man is very important person for William Shakespeare and to whom he has addressed many of his sonnets. Then he also expresses the agony of his love for a capricious and unpredictable married woman who deceives him with his friend. Now, this is another character to whom the sonnets of Shakespeare are addressed. He also expresses the agony of his love for a capricious. Capricious means changing, ever changing or unreliable. The character or the woman to whom Shakespeare expresses his love is capricious. Capricious means not trustworthy, changing constantly or unreliable person she might be. And unpredictable means indecisive. To her, one cannot predict about the behavior. Unpredictable married woman who deceives him with his friend. Now, it is a very great miserable thing for William Shakespeare that the lady whom he loved so dearly, she deceives him with his friend. To that friend, he is lenient. Lenient means generous to the point of forgiveness. But for that woman, he feels anger gradually increasing to hate. Now, this is a great thing on the part of Shakespeare that he is ready to forgive his friend, means the friend with whom the lady maintains the relationship and deceives William Shakespeare. But William Shakespeare is lenient. Lenience means he is generous enough to the point of forgiveness. But to that woman, he is not ready to forgive. He is gradually developing a kind of hatred for that lady. So, this is the case on the part of William Shakespeare that he addresses his sonnets to these two personalities. One is a young man and another is a woman. The finest, the most poignant, and the most passionate sonnets are those in which he gives himself with all his love and his genius to the voting man who dazzles him even after he himself has been betrayed by him. The finest, સૌથી સુંદર, the most poignant, સૌથી વધુ ઇમોશનલ અથવા ટચિંગ, એન્ડ મોસ્ટ પેશનેટ, સૌથી વધુ લાગણીસભર સોનેટ્સ એ છે, શેક્સપિયરના સોનેટ્સ એ છે કે જેમાં ઇન વિચ હી ગીવ્સ હિમસેલ્ફ, કે જે સોનેટ્સમાં તે પોતાની જાતને સમર્પિત કરી દે છે, ગીવ્સ હિમસેલ્ફ ટુ ધેટ વોટિંગ મેન હુ ડેઝલ્સ હિમ, કે જેનાથી એ ખૂબ પ્રભાવિત છે, કે જેનાથી અંજાઈ ગયેલો છે, તે વ્યક્તિને સમર્પિત કરી દે છે. With all his love and his genius, his love for him and his genius as a great author, a great poet, he offers himself to that young man even after he himself has been betrayed by him. And it is known to all of us that he, means that young man, has betrayed William Shakespeare, and to that man he offers himself entirely. So these sonnets are expressive of the innermost feelings of William Shakespeare, where he has all his love for that young man. It is in these sonnets that Shakespeare unlocked his heart. So these are the examples of best of his sonnets that express the open heart of William Shakespeare. He unlocked his heart. તે પોતાનું હૃદય ખોલીને લાગણીઓ, ઉર્મિઓ અભિવ્યક્ત કરે છે, which he kept a hidden mystery while writing his dramas, where he had to be impersonal. Shakespeare, who did not open his heart while writing his dramas, because there he is supposed to be impersonal. He cannot express his personal feelings while writing dramas, and there he never opens his heart. The feelings have been very beautifully expressed in the sonnets. His sonnets have given rise to many different problems for the critics to solve. Now, after analyzing the sonnets written by Shakespeare, the critics are in a dilemmic condition, or they are facing some problems to solve. Two problems are there. Number one is, who was that young man for whom he expresses his love in the sonnets? Now, the first person, the important person to whom Shakespeare expresses his love in the sonnets, who is that young man? This is the first question. And the second question is, who was that dark lady who deserted our poet and carried on love with his friend poet, who was his rival in love? Now, the dark lady to whom Shakespeare has addressed his sonnets, that dark lady, who is that woman, and who is that young man? This is the question that puzzles the critics to solve, to find the solution. The critics are unanimous in regarding George Chapman as the poet's rival. Now, all the critics who think or worry about the love relations of William Shakespeare and the other two characters to whom Shakespeare is associated, finding George Chapman, they are all unanimously say that he must be the rival of William Shakespeare to whom he has been engaged. Sonnet number 1 to 126 seem to be addressed to a young man. And sonnet number 127 to 154 addressed to the so-called dark lady. We know that in total Shakespeare has written 154 sonnets, and out of those 154 sonnets, 126 sonnets have been addressed to that young man. So the majority of the portion has been addressed to the young man, and the remaining sonnets from 127 to 154, they have been addressed to that dark lady. So this is the picture of the sonnets written by William Shakespeare. It is sufficient to point out that these sonnets deal with love and express the lover's mood in many different ways and aspects. Shakespeare's uh, treasure of sonnets is very, very rich, and all of them are the real pearls, as we have already mentioned, uh, preserved in a very rich cascade. Friends, let us see a specimen of William Shakespeare's sonnet. Here is a beautiful sonnet with the Shakespearean rhyme scheme A B A B C D C D E F E F and G G. This is the sonnet into which you are supposed to see the rhyme scheme at the end of each line. So the rhyming words in the alternate lines, at the end of the alternate lines, you are supposed to see here. See, the first line ends with minds, and the third one is finds. Minds and finds. Second and fourth, love, move. The next quatrain is mark with bark, shaken with taken. Third quatrain, chicks and wicks, come and dum. So this is how the alternate lines are rhyming equally. So AB, AB means the same kind of rhyme pattern is followed here by the author, means the poet. AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, and ultimately in the last two lines, that is the rhyming couplet, is GG, means proved and loved, means the entire sonnet of 14 lines, it has been divided in this rhyming scheme. So the beauty of the thought expressed in this poem is also beautiful. Let us try to understand what has been expressed by William Shakespeare in this beautiful sonnet. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Beautifully expressed the feeling of love and the idea of marriage. Shakespeare પોતાની લગ્ન વિશેની અને પ્રેમની અનુભૂતિને કઈ રીતે વ્યક્ત કરે છે જુઓ. લેટ મી નોટ એડમિટ ઇમ્પેડિમેન્ટ્સ, કોઈ પણ અવરોધોને હું સ્વીકારવા તૈયાર નથી. એડમિટ ધી ઇમ્પેડિમેન્ટ, ઇમ્પેડિમેન્ટ મીન્સ અવરોધોને, કોઈ પણ અવરોધોને હું સ્વીકારવા તૈયાર નથી. આઈ એમ નોટ રેડી ટુ એડમિટ ટુ ધી મેરેજ ઓફ ટ્રુ માઇન્ડ્સ. ટ્રુ માઇન્ડ્સ એટલે સાચા મનથી જે લગ્ન કરવા ઉત્સુક છે તે લોકોના લગ્નને કોઈ અવરોધ નડતો નથી. લવ ઇઝ નોટ લવ વિચ ઓલ્ટર્સ વેન ઇટ ઓલ્ટરેશન ફાઇન્ડ્સ. સાચો પ્રેમ એ એવો હોય કે જે કદીએ કોઈપણ સંજોગોમાં કોઈપણ ઓલ્ટરેશન એટલે બદલાવ, કોઈ પરિવર્તનને એ સ્વીકારતો નથી. એટલે સાચો પ્રેમ એ હંમેશા કોન્સ્ટન્ટ હોય છે, એ કદી બદલાતો નથી. ઓર બેન્ડ્સ વિથ ધ રિમૂવર ટુ રિમૂવ, એને કોઈ બીજા રસ્તે વાળવાનો પ્રયત્ન કરે તો પણ એ વળતો નથી. આ પ્રકારનો પ્રેમ હોય તો જ એ લગ્ન એ સાચા લગ્ન ગણી શકાય. સમથિંગ લાઈક ધીસ he tries to express in this sonnet, and at the end of it, the solution that he gives here is, if this be error, જો આ મારી લાગણી છે એ ખોટી હોય, ભૂલ ભરેલી હોય, and upon me proved, and એ મારી લાગણી જો ખોટી સાબિત થાય તો, મારા ઉપર એ ખોટો આરોપ મુકાય તો, I never writ, હું આવું કદી લખું જ નહીં. nor no man ever loved, અને કદી કોઈ માણસે પ્રેમ પણ કર્યો જ નહીં હોય. તો પોતાના વિચારો ઉપર કેટલો કોન્ફિડન્સ છે અને એ બ્યુટીફુલી એક્સપ્રેસ છે અહીંયા. So this is how Shakespeare expresses his feelings, his emotions, his idea about love, marriage, and ultimately life. Very beautifully expressed in his sonnets. Now, after understanding or talking about the sonnets written by Sidney Spencer and William Shakespeare, let us try to summarize them. The English sonnet demands a place in itself in any history of literature, not only because it represents a peculiar and important division of poetical writing, but because almost every great poet of the day strove to attain special excellence as a sonnet writer, since it was chiefly through the sonnet that the spirit of the Italian Renaissance entered English poetry, and because this branch of art culminates in the finest flower of Elizabethan verse, the sonnets of Shakespeare. It's a very long line, but very, very wealthy in the expression of the idea of sonnet writing. The English sonnet demands a place in itself. English sonnet demands a place in itself in any history of literature. સાહિત્યના ઇતિહાસમાં કોઈ પણ ઇતિહાસ તપાસો તો એમાં તમને સોનેટનું સ્થાન ચોક્કસ સ્વરૂપે જોવા મળશે. Not only because it represents a peculiar and important division of poetical writing, ચોક્કસ પ્રકારની કાવ્યાત્મક અભિવ્યક્તિને એ વાચા આપે છે માટે એટલું જ નહીં, but because almost every great poet of the day strove to attain special excellence as a sonnet writer. Each and every poet of the this era, means of the Elizabethan age, he tried to attain special excellence. એક શ્રેષ્ઠ કક્ષાની કવિતા રજૂ કરવા માટેનો એણે પૂરો પ્રયત્ન કરેલો છે as a sonnet writer. Since it was chiefly through the sonnet that the spirit of the Italian Renaissance entered English poetry. Sonnet was a form of poetry brought from Italy, and it is through that form the Italian Renaissance entered into English poetry, and that became the vehicle of introducing Renaissance into England and English language and literature. And because this branch of art culminates means ends. So the branch of art, this art of sonnet writing, in the finest flower of Elizabethan verse. Elizabethan verse નો જે finest flower કહી શકાય તો કોણ છે? The sonnets of Shakespeare. So the sonnets of Shakespeare is the finest flower in the Elizabethan era to find the best of sonnets by him. The Elizabethan sonnet illustrates the temper of the time It bears graphic witness to the Elizabeth's tendency to borrow from foreign literary efforts. Each and every form of literature uh, is some way or the other they are borrowing some ideas, some images, some language from the other languages and other countries and other time zones. The same way, here also there are some images which are borrowed from the other countries. Even the greatest of Elizabethan sonneteers did not disdain, means they are not uh, feeling themselves scorn, occasional transcription of the language and sentiment of French or Italian poetry. They are here ready to accept some ideas and some sentiments along with some language that from French or Italian poetry they are borrowing things, and so they have no scorn in borrowing such ideas from other poetry. It should of course be maintained that the vast body of Elizabethan sonnet, of which more than 1,000 examples survive. So many examples we have today also of the Elizabethan sonnet, suffers from a monotony of style. So these sonnets, they suffer the monotony of style. Monotony means એક સરખાપણું, જે લાંબા ગાળે એક સરખા પ્રકારના સોનેટ્સની અભિવ્યક્તિ માણસને કંટાળો ઉપજાવે, તો એ પ્રકારનો કેટલીક અભિવ્યક્તિ પણ તમને અહીંયા જોવા મળે છે. From which even the gracious genius of Spenser was not entirely able to escape. So the sonnets of Spenser also have this kind of style that is in a way somewhat monotonous. So this is the description of the sonnet form developed in the Elizabethan period. The contribution by Wyatt, Surrey, Sidney, Spenser and Shakespeare is very great, and sonnet form developed very greatly in the mighty hands of such sonneteers. Friends, we shall stop here, and the remaining portion of this topic will be discussed in the next lecture. Okay, thank you very much.